OP finds out he has a daughter. 4 years later, the ex-stepdad wants to reconnect. I'll try to make this as short as possible since I don't like thinking about my situation a lot. If I leave anything out, I'm sorry. In November of 2019, I42M was playing a game with my wife 42F and our kids 9 and 4M when I got a knock on my door. When I opened, there were 2 officers and a shy girl who I will call Jane, now 19F. I let them in, and the cops explained that Jane was my biological daughter. I had no idea of this, but they brought me a DNA test. Then it all made sense. For some backstory, I had a one-night stand 20 years ago with a random woman I met at a party. The woman was actually married, and her husband, whom I'll call Steve, found out Jane wasn't his after Jane took a 23andMe test as a small gift from one of her friends. When Steve found out about this, he immediately blew up at Jane and the mom and kicked them both out of the house. During the divorce process, he told Jane that she was a lie. He would never be his daughter ever again, and he never wants to see her ever again. Jane cried and begged for him because she only ever knew of him as her father, but Steve took his name off the birth certificate and went to NC. When I asked why she wasn't staying with her biological mom, they told me that the mom fell into depression and started taking drugs. She became verbally and physically abusive until an accident a week ago that caused her to be taken away from CPS. I agreed to let her in, and Jane brought her bags into the house. This was obviously very unstable, as for a while Jane was shy around us. She didn't talk a lot. My wife and I were as welcoming to her as we could. Our oldest son Alex immediately started loving Jane and tried to spend time with him. He always wanted a sister, and he spent a lot of time with Jane. Our younger son Tony was a newborn when she arrived, so he just grew up with her and loved her naturally. Over time, Jane started becoming more open with us. We got closer and closer, and in December 2020, when the family was having a movie night, Jane kissed me on the cheek and said, "I love you, Dad." We all cried except me, lol, out of happiness. My daughter is now a beautiful 19-year-old lady in college, and it's like we already raised her for the 19 years of her life. Now to the problem. I got a random message a week ago from someone I didn't recognize. When I opened it, I realized that Steve had sent the message. It was pretty long, so I'll just reword it here. "Hello, my name. I want to talk to you about Jane. When I found out she wasn't mine, my world shattered. I kicked her out because I couldn't bear to see her after the love of my life had betrayed me in such a devastating way. I know you had no fault in this, but it still hurts. Over the last year, I've realized that my daughter will always be my daughter, and nothing can change that. I want to reach out to you so I can apologize to her. Please let me see her again." At first, I wanted to tell Jane, but then I remembered a conversation about 7 months ago. My oldest son asked about Jane's other father, Steve, and I overheard Jane say something like, "Oh, you mean ex-father. He doesn't realize the damage he has done to me, and it took so long to recover." I have confided in only my wife about this, and she told me to just leave the message be and ignore it. So now I'm stuck with 3 outcomes. 1. Tell Jane about the message and raise hellfire again. 2. I will respond to it myself and see how it goes. 3. Just ignore the message and let our lives continue as normal. I'm not completely sure what to do. TLDR. I found out I had a biological daughter from a one-night stand, and her stepdad immediately disowned her. I took her in with open arms, and we have a strong bond, but the stepdad wants to reconnect. So what now? Edit. I forgot to mention that my daughter still lives at home since the college isn't far away, and she wants to save money. Just in case that's important, she was also more open to us about Steve as time went on, and she claims to have no love or respect for him anymore. One comment the OP responded to was, "Did Jane ever get therapy for this abandonment?" I can appreciate that she said ex-father, and all but most children, even if aused or abandoned, desperately want a connection with their parent. They may talk a big game, but it's a protective mechanism. As an example, I had no contact with my father in my teens and didn't reconnect until I was in my early 30s. I spent a lot of time in therapy in my 20s regarding the awes I suffered as a kid from both parents. But that didn't make me not want them. I get that my story is anecdotal, but you can hit up any family therapist, and they could give you a lot of similar stories. I45F think you should leave it up to Jane. Show her the message and tell her that you will support her in whatever she chooses, and that nothing will change for you if she wants to see where this goes. Is Steve a jerk who is royally effed up? Yes, but he's human. And had he not messed up, you'd likely not have your daughter in your life in this capacity. If she were 10, I'd likely tell Steve he can take it up when she's an adult. But she is 19 and an adult, so I would not take away the opportunity for her to choose for herself. If you do, and she finds out later, you'll be the bad guy. The police highly recommended I get therapy for Jane. After the long legal part of me officially becoming a guardian for her, we got 2 therapy classes. One individually for Jane and one for the family on how to adjust. We spent 2 years in each. Update. So my last post got some good advice. For those who don't know, I have a daughter from a one-night stand, and her stepdad, who previously disowned her, wanted to reconnect. A lot of you told me I should come clean to Jane, so I did just that. I sat her down after work the day after I posted, and we had a long talk. When I said that Steve had messaged her, Jane got furious and demanded to see the message. She wanted to spill her guts out to him. I tried calming her down, and she started crying. She said she still thought of him as a dad when the news came out, and was scared that he would get rid of her, and that she began having a hard time trusting people because of what happened. She hugged me and kissed me on the neck a lot. And I told her that if she wants to respond to the message, she can tell me. She said she would think about it. Some days passed by, and Jane told me that she had what she wanted to say on paper. I took her sheet, went to Steve's contact, and typed, "Hello, Steve. Jane has decided to write you a message herself and send it to you. I have attached it below, so keep in mind that I am not controlling what she says, and I won't force her into anything she doesn't want to do." I then attached a picture of the letter Jane wrote. The letter was basically her explaining in detail everything she feels, and she wants nothing to do with him anymore because she isn't his daughter anymore. I closed the chat with Steve, so I don't know if he read it, but I hope he did. I think this should be the last update. I did see one rule on this subreddit that only one update is allowed. If anything else major happens, I'll post it somewhere else. Maybe you could check my profile, but I don't think it will go further than this. Jane, me, and our family spent the night together. Some people asked me to elaborate on the specifics of how Jane got shuffled into my house in the first place, so I'll explain some details. I don't know the full story of Steve's divorce, but I do know that he relinquished all parental rights to Jane. The part where he said he's removing his name from the birth certificate was an obscenity he yelled during the confrontation, but it was never actually removed. When the biological mom became Osif, a neighbor called the cops one night, and Jane was placed in foster care. The 23andMe test she took was evidence on how to find me, and Jane was actually the one who suggested finding me, so she could at least know who I was. This is all the information I got from the people who brought Jane here, so sorry if it appears off. I did ask some more questions about how I was found, but they couldn't fully reveal, so that's all that happened. Thanks to everyone who gave advice. TLDR. My daughter sent a final message to her ex-stepdad, and all is well now. One comment the OP responded to was, "Just so you know, you can post on your user thread if any updates are coming." It's also a good way to keep the text when a post happens to break a rule and get removed. I think Steve is going to try again, possibly in the summer, but more likely in later years. Guilt is a powerful feeling sometimes. It's not easily gone, and it will push him again into reaching her. Thank you for suggesting the user thread to post. But Steve reached out to me via social media, don't want to share specifics, and I closed the chat that he used to message me. So it's unlikely that he can find out any more information because we both were limited to one message until I accepted his friend request, which I didn't do. Thank you for watching.